Hey there, I'm Pete Townsend, and this is Money Never Sleeps. We look inside the minds of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. As many of our listeners know, I lead the Techstars Web3 Accelerator, investing in entrepreneurs building in Web3 and enabling the next wave of growth in the decentralized internet and in tokenized economies. Applications are now open for our spring 2025 class, so check out techstars.com/accelerators/web3 to apply. Niall Dennehy is an Irish entrepreneur and the co-founder and COO of AID, who are bringing traceability and transparency to the flow of funds for governments, NGOs, and charities with their payments and digital identity infrastructure bridging Web 2 to Web 3. AID were in the news most recently when their Kare Survivor wallet was deployed in the US to provide rapid financial assistance and fulfillment services to hurricane disaster survivors with the ability to respond to multiple disasters at once, creating a critical lifeline for vulnerable and underserved communities. Where it used to take weeks, if not months, for relief disbursements to reach survivors, it now takes hours or even seconds for survivors to have access to funds. Before Niall co-founded AID with CEO Joseph Thompson in 2015, he led the design, development, and growth of numerous award-winning apps and platforms working in over 40 countries. Beyond AID, Niall gives first to founders and gives back to Techstars as a mentor for the Techstars Web3 Accelerator, and he is part of the OG crew, the first 11 guests of Money Never Sleeps. You can listen to more of his backstory in episode 11 from August 2018, and I've linked that in the show notes on moneyneversleeps.ie. In this episode, Niall continues the story of the AID journey and how things have evolved since we last spoke in 2018, and we riff on innovations in digital identity and payments, disaster relief and support, the future of identity and financial inclusion, navigating fundraising with a mission-driven startup, the flywheel of impact-focused ventures, what it takes to persevere through the ups and downs of startup life, and the importance of support and community. All right here on Money Never Sleeps. So Niall Dennehy, wonderful to have you back. You were guest number 11 on the podcast way back in 2018, and that number 11 is quite significant, right? I just finished a stint with 11FS where I learned all about podcasting, and you were guest number 11. And you've probably introduced me to 11, if not more, of our guests over the years. I've thought a lot about this chat, and I listened back to episode number 11 yesterday. And one of the things that jumped out at me is how consistent you've been with how you talk about AID. And it hasn't wavered, and it's been so impressive. Digital ID stands out, but not just digital ID in its own right, but as an enabler of payments. And there's tons going on in this space, and I'm excited to dig into this with you. But this is so important because with your latest news about with fast and instant disbursements to survivors via digital ID, this duality between digital ID and payments is at the core. Can you catch us up on how things have gone since 2018 for AID when you were last on the show? I know that's a big question, right? But just give us a flavor of how things have evolved for the business in the last 6 years since you were last on the show.
Happy to, and great to be back, Pete. I think that I'm a super fan of the pod, and I get huge enjoyment out of connecting up people who run podcasts with good guests, which hopefully I'm one of them.
Oh, absolutely.
Pete, yeah, thank you. What I hope to do, Pete, is that I always feel a debt of gratitude for people who run podcasts because I know the time, the effort, the energy that people put in and the amount of learnings that I take from them. And I would say that when it comes to podcasts, I'm always very grateful for people who do it, yourself included. And formerly, your great colleague, Owen Fitzgerald, who I hope to see back at some stage. And when I listen to people like Mai Santa Maria and Alejandro on the pod, so delighted to make a comeback. And you're right, Pete. And a lot of whole path has changed. And I think the one thing that could sum us up at AID is we persevere, we're dogged, we're determined, we have a long-term mission, we have a long-term vision. And what I tell people is that when you're a founder, it's all about getting the mission and the vision into people's hearts and brains and veins. And one other guy I think that's worth a mention, since you talked about 11FS, is the guy who used to work at 11FS, Simon Taylor. But when it comes to identity, one of the things that Simon said back then, like we're still saying right now, and when I read his great newsletter every week, he said that if you fix identity, you fix payments. And we believe that identity is at the core of payments. And a lot of the areas that we do work in, developed countries, developing. We always say that if you don't have a form of identity, you're legally, you're socially, you're financially excluded. And even when it goes back to the pitch that we crafted in 2016, when we were part of Techstars, with Max Kelly in London, that was a big part of what we did. And we very much aligned both the technology and the business roadmap around problems that were related to identity. We started out in developing countries, but I would say more recently, we ventured more into the US. And what we discovered was that the problems that were faced by a lack of identity, specifically digital, are the same the world over, irrespective of how modern the market that you're trying to penetrate is. That is the case. And when it comes to it, we're basically orchestrating payments around identity. We're associating services with identity. And to be really specific, we believe that everybody should own, control, manage, and be able to monetize the data that's associated with their identity. And I guess, Pete, when we spoke last back in 2018, we had done projects with people like the United Nations Development Program, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Red Cross, all these big names, German government, the Dutch NGOs, you name it. We delved into remittances, welfare, healthcare, donations. We won a ton of prizes, got loads of accolades. But the thing, as you point out, that was consistent to everything that we did and we still do was that identity was at the core, specifically self-sovereign identity. And when it comes to, up to the present day, I guess what we've built is a pretty modern platform where identity is the core of everything. And what we do then is we build these different services on top. So to delve into it now a little bit more, the latest platform that we've built, of which Kare is an example of an application that sits on top, we can now issue vouchers for more than 750 retailers in the US, whereby we can get down to the level of the SKU at Walmart, Target, CVS, Walgreens. We can move to the stable coins. We've integrated on and off ramps. But the key thing core to all of them is identity, and specifically digital identity. And how we do it, Pete, then is the Kare Wallet, the Kare platform that you talked about there. If you download the Kare Wallet, which is available today on both iOS and Google Play, we run people through a very lightweight KYC AML check. We use Stripe at the back end for that and a company called Alloy. And what we do is when that happens, when you go through all of the check, OFAC, BINISN, FACTA, PEP, etc., what we do is we put a cryptographic attestation on chain to show that this individual that's associated with this wallet, and this wallet, which is capable of holding all of these different, let's say, payment mechanisms and receiving stable coins, payouts, disbursements, a lot of it in really testing situations, that's all connected up with identity. And really what we're doing is back to the old triangle of trust where you've got the issuer, you've got the holder, you've got the verifier. To give you a concrete example and to go to the present day, what we're doing with Kare, we recently helped the people on the ground in the US that were affected by a number of different hurricanes that might be fresh in people's memory. That can be a Hurricane Milton, which hit Florida just over a week ago. Before that, there was a hurricane in Louisiana called Francine. And just after that, there was a hurricane called Helene. And what we've been doing to give your audience a practical real life example is we work with a number of different agencies in the US, including people like FEMA, the American Red Cross, the United Way, St. Vincent de Paul, Disaster Services Corporation, but they will direct people to download a Kare Wallet. These people, if you can imagine it, Pete, in your head, they may have had their houses nearly destroyed, blown away, whatever. They're having difficulty getting access to services. Cash is not readily available, but the one thing that is available to them is a Walmart in most cases. And what we're able to do right now with our platform is back to the idea of orchestration is enable people to apply for supports with the app after they go through the KYC AML check. That then goes to a dashboard. And with that dashboard, a case manager working for these organizations can approve funding, which can be either delivered in stable coins, which are off-ramped into USD, or what we can do is we can get money uploaded to a bank account, which is held by an institution like Wells Fargo, where you've got your FDIC insurance, everything is compliant. It can be pushed to a card. That card can be denominated to a specific value. And in the case of Walmart, where people are actively receiving assistance with our platform today, we can then associate a dollar value with that card. And we can even prohibit certain goods from being purchased because the provider that we work with to issue these cards that are Walmart branded or whatever retailer, you name it, we can then get down to the level of the SKU whereby, for example, you can't buy alcohol, tobacco, firearms, but all of these different things. And I got to share a video clip with you that perhaps you could put in the bio for the notes. We enable people to do, even if you're a non-technical individual, you are, as we put it, a survivor who's been affected by one of these disasters. What we've effectively issued you with is a digital identity. A cryptographic attestation goes on chain. Our platform is chain agnostic. And when it comes back to the old triangle of trust, the issuer, the holder, the verifier, the issuer could be US government. with the form of documentation, or it could be a social security number or a DMV issued license. The holder is the self-sovereign individual. And then the verifier can be an organization like American Red Cross or FEMA, but with a pretty innovative stuff, but we've wrapped it up into what we believe is a simple platform. And to your question, Pete, and what you said, it hasn't changed that much since 2015 when we got started and 2018 when we got going. But unlike a lot of companies who really haven't focused on the right things, we believe we have. And we've now created a platform that can orchestrate all of these different things, but putting the individual at the heart, fixing a lot of the broken stuff that happens in crypto, like poor UI, UX, poor experience, and a lot of the rampant speculation. We haven't launched a token as of yet because we wanted to ensure that we've got a platform that's correct. It's out there. It's doing good things. There's utility with it. It's solving big real world problems. So anyway, Pete, to wrap the first part up, 2018, we've been doing similar things. We believe we've been constantly improving upon what we're doing and really focusing on the core mission, which is to bring identity to people who may not have it and to enable people to own, control, manage, and eventually monetize their data. That's where we're going, Pete, but I get excited when I talk about this stuff.
You do. It all stands out, Niall, in that you have been so consistent, the perseverance, the messaging around this. We hear from naysayers, right? Oh, that's never going to work. That's never going to work. You do it this way, do it that way. And then 5-6 years later, those naysayers, same people came back and said, Jesus, you were telling me about this so long ago, and I never actually thought it could happen, but now it's happened. And the things happening in the market right now in support of this as well, with Stripe's acquisition of Bridge. And Bridge were referring to themselves as the Stripe of digital assets or Stripe of stablecoins. This whipsaw moment that's happening right now in the space. Are stablecoins the ChatGPT of AI? Do you think that's a thing?
I think back to what I said, Pete, about identity being broken, as you and I know, payments, we think they're pretty broken as they are. They're getting better. And when I looked at the acquisition, arguably that there is product market fit with stable coins. And if you look at the volumes, which I believe right now they're 5.6 trillion off the top of my head that I read last night in relation to the Bridge acquisition. But the amount of payments being moved with stable coins is growing exponentially. And we're finding out that in places like Argentina, which is often talked about, that they really are making a difference to people on the ground. And I think that goes back to what we talked about with ATEX, is that we want to build technology that makes a difference. And we're not just talking about bits, we're talking about atoms. So therefore, that's why when people maybe don't believe in what we're doing, we believe that technology is only really going to make an impact when it hits real people who have real world problems. And that's what crypto has suffered from in a big way. But again, true to the core of the mission, Pete, we've navigated numerous different bear markets. We just believe in what we're doing. But when I look at that acquisition of Bridge, payments, stablecoins, I think I'm not sure if it's the chat GPT moment just yet for Bitcoin, for blockchain, for crypto, but there's definitely something in it. And when you look at the efficiencies that it brings, it's the path of least resistance for me to move money around. The fees are super low, and these are things that matter to people around the world, and therefore they matter to us. But I think an exciting time. And again, when it comes to Stripe, great validation. I think they see the future of payments and just taking out a lot of the routing that happens, the dynamic nature of payments, and the ability to cut out layers and maybe eat into the margins that are being made by people like the card issuers and the card networks. You can see how much more efficient that thing will become over time. And that USDC and people like Circle are doing such a great job with regulation and positioning themselves in a manner that these things are legitimate. You're seeing all these big custodians seeing that these are backed up with treasuries and different, I guess, liquid assets. But yeah, it seems like we're going the right direction, Pete.
Yeah, we are. But anyway, listen, back to the Kare Survivor wallet, right? You gave us the lowdown on that. And the point of it that I said wow on is where you can get right down to the SKU level of the products being bought at Walmart and preventing people from buying alcohol with the money that's been sent to them to help them survive after a huge natural disaster like this. A lot happened with Algorand, with the American Response and Resiliency Program. What were kind of the elements of life on Earth besides hurricanes and natural disasters that needed to happen for Aid Tech and the Kare Survivor wallet to actually enter this market in the US?
So what we did, Pete, was We started working realistically about 2 years ago with the generous support and investment through the Al Grant Foundation. And they've been very good to us. Shout out to Matt Keller, who's the head of impact over there, who's our go-to guy. And they've got quite a big presence in Dublin too and do great work. We started working with the Al Grant Foundation specifically for the Kare platform. And what we decided was, again, that there's got to be a way to show people where their money is going, make it more traceable, and make it a lot easier for people to receive support in times when they need it most. And we believe that the speed, the efficiencies that blockchain brings, but also the traceability and the transparency, but the ability to preserve your privacy as an individual who can be pseudonymous. So what we do, and specifically with CarePeed, is as I mentioned, we run people through a very lightweight KYC AML check. We put a cryptographic attestation on chain. And what happens is then, let's say, for example, Pete, if I run you through that simple use case, and we are to make $1,000 available to individuals whereby they can go to a Walmart. Again, that's all provisioned through our platform, through a dashboard. We create a program that's associated with the brand. That could be Walmart. And we associate a denomination with that card. That can be $1,000. And then as part of the backend infrastructure that of some of the companies that we work with, because they are providing the loyalty and rewards platforms for a lot of these big retailers already, what we're doing, again, back to this idea of orchestration, we don't build all that part because, again, it's way too big for us. These companies have been around for decades, but we simply create this way of non-technical people to interact with these super complex backends through a very simple interface with an app, which can go on any chain. And in this case, it's the Al Grant blockchain. Keep it simple, abstract all that away, and abstract all the stuff that happens behind the scenes. But if the survivor piece, if you want to take that simple example, they go to a Walmart, they've got $1,000 USD on their branded gift card, which is made available through the Kare app. What they can do is basically take that, fire up the app, go to the cashier at Walmart, and they can hit the redeem button on that card, which has been activated, and there's $1,000 worth of value there. And what it means is that if we've provisioned that with the consent of the organization initially, to not enable alcohol, tobacco, firearms to be purchased, the platform that we leverage at the back end, which is connected to ours, means that if you are a survivor, you've got 20 goods in your basket and you decide to get a bottle of whiskey and a round of ammunition, which can happen, the transaction won't be allowed to proceed. It means that there's a record then put on chain that this IP address of a human or a DID received this amount of funding from this agency at a specific time. And you can even then pull from the platform where it was spent. So what we're doing in a way is creating this really unique data that we believe in the future will be available in real time, that will be accessible by AI, for example, and that it will give governments, for example, better insight into real-time consumption patterns of human beings on the ground as to where money is going, but without being able to spy in the individuals. It's not quite a CDBC, but we think it's got the best parts of that to retain your anonymity. But some of these people are still more Web 1.0 people, but without them realizing it, but we've kept the data in their hands. This goes back to consistency in the core of the mission back in 2015, 2016. We're really creating a platform that enables this really structured data to be created. You can validate that you're human. We're making it easy for you to avail of, let's call it crypto native and more traditional finance services. But it all goes back to the idea of fixing identity at the human level, making it portable, making it persistent, and making it private through the individual. And again, back to Simon Taylor, what he mentioned, fixed identity, fixed payments. And that's what we're doing.
You do. And Niall, you are the walking embodiment, the talking embodiment of everything that I say to founders about how to bridge Web3 to Web2, how to make this relevant, how to make it a technology that people don't need to understand. They just need to be able to use it and access it in order to improve, well, not just the quality of their financial lives, but the quality of their lives as survivors. As a surprise for you, I reached out to my former co-host, Owen Fitzgerald, and let him know that I was bringing you back onto the show. And I said, would you like to ask Niall a question? And his response was absolutely. He said, it has been a long journey with AID Tech, as you have often been ahead of the market in terms of product. How have you stayed positive and kept going, educating customers and partners along the way?
I guess it goes back, Pete, to having a core mission and vision that resonates with people. For example, some of the best people that we've found that have worked for us and still do to this day, they've found us because of our mission. I'll give you an example. I don't think you'll mind me saying this, but there's a guy who's now our director of engineering, Andre Manning, who does phenomenal work. But Andre did a great job before he joined us, but he was attracted by the mission because he saw me speaking remotely during COVID about the mission of AID Tech and what we're doing to help people. But we also made it clear that we're a commercial organization. We're marauding capitalists and we want to make a lot of money because we believe to do good and to have, an impact, you do have to make money. You've got to run it commercially. You've got to be quite ruthless in what you do. We're not a charity by any means.
You're a
but
business model.
Totally. You have to be. And we can be cutthroat when we need to be as well, like any company. I don't want to talk about founder mode, but when it comes to it, Pete, this may sound a little bit cliche, but the people that we have worked with us and the people who are currently working with us, I guess they have come to us because they have said that, look, for example, I want to be able to tell my kids that the work I'm doing on a day-to-day basis makes an impact. Andre, being one of the guys working with us, said the same thing, that he wanted to have something to say to his kids about the work that they're doing. And even when I see my own 3 kids here, when we tell them that we are, for example, helping survivors on the ground who are affected by these different natural disasters, which again is only one vertical of what we're doing, and that there are people in Florida who may have had their lives impacted in a huge way and our technology is being used. And if I look at our platform and I can see that a case manager has maybe approved a survivor for $250 that they can now get, that they can now use, that they can help get back up on their feet, there isn't anything much more rewarding than that to us. And it also proves that the technology that we're building matters, and we're using it in a state-of-the-art way. But there are all the different things that help us, I think, get the message straight, because we do talk, I'd like to think, from the heart and just tell the truth as it is. We're founders. We have to paint a big vision and maybe slightly even change the messaging when you're dealing with a VC who is more commercially minded, even though we are too. But all along the way, it's those different things, to Owen's question, that we found when it comes to educating people what we're doing. And the fact that we're able to talk to real world examples with real world people that are leveraging our technology on a day-to-day basis and seeing them, hearing their stories. You talked about the American Recovery and Resilience Program. One of our partners literally last week put out a tweet about this, and they had a number of different families who had been affected by the Mississippi tornadoes. I can't remember the exact date, but they were gathered around a table all together. A case manager was educating them as to where they can go to download the app, how they do it, how they apply for support. And there was a broad spectrum of society, from a very young girl, about the age of one of my daughters, and her mother had been using our technology. There was a veteran, US military veteran, using the application, the technology, but these people were pictured with their app in their hands, and they were interviewed to talk about the difference that it made to them, and that when they were affected by these tornadoes, it was difficult for them to get support. And even from a technical point of view, oftentimes from the federal government. This was in the news recently in the US, and it was made into a bit of a political hot potato. But FEMA, the agency who dispersed billions of dollars every year, what they often do is go around door to door. They knock on people's doors. And you may have heard about the $750 that they make available in what they call immediate assistance. But that immediate assistance is not that immediate. It can often take days, weeks, or even months to get that, even for a small amount. It can sometimes be delivered in the form of a paper check, because some of these people may have no bank account. But the platform that we've created, because we can always have these people in the back of our mind when we're talking about the technology, I think it helps us to educate people, to get the message straight, but to be proud of what we're doing and attract good people. As though when it comes to what Owen mentioned there, I think that's a big part of how we can keep the message straight, because we don't have to change it up very often, because the core mission of the company is the same. But one of our guys, back to Algorand, hat tipped, Matt Keller, if you can put his tweet in the bio, he tweeted again, he reposted that same image, and his messaging was something to the effect of, it's true that a picture can speak 1,000 words, none more so than this, where we're helping thousands of people on the ground. When times do get tough, Pete, we keep that in the back of our minds. At least I do, and I think all of our team do. But remember, the people that we're dealing with are real, and we're using cutting edge technology, and we're committed to the mission.
Yeah, it's crazy that on a question that I asked you, that Owen Fitzgerald submitted, and where probably one of the biggest mental models that has formed for me in concrete in doing this podcast over the last 6 years has been the concept of the flywheel. And as you're speaking about this, I'm thinking about the flywheel of a mission-driven startup, and that it starts at the top. It starts with you and Joseph and the mission, and bringing people on board who also believe in that mission, and that where that mission triggers them and compels them to go above and beyond, because it's not just about engineering. It's not just about developing and coding. There's something else there. And when you can then start delivering impact to the world, as you've been doing, that then fuels you as founders. It fuels the team to say, this is working. We're going again. We're going to do this again. We're going to bring more people on board. And that's going to enable ATech to deliver an even bigger impact. And that flywheel goes around and around.
Totally. We get quite philosophical with what we do. We read a bit of philosophy every now and again. I read something the other day, I can't remember the name, but a French philosopher said that if you want to go and discover the new world, you don't find men, tell them where to get the trees to chop the wood, how to assemble the planks together, and how to craft them with the hammer and nail. But you want to get people who yearn for the sea, because they'll build the best ship possible once they're clear on what the mission is. And they will discover the new world with you and for you. So there's something to be said for that. But again, a little bit of alignment clearly has got to come from the top. But that's how we think about it. And yeah, stay true to the mission and the vision. Having gone through Techstars before, talking about the flywheel and meeting people like David Cohen, Brad Feld, etc., they talk about having an altimeter, that you want to know how high up you are. You want to know the velocity, but you also want to know the direction that you're going so you don't crash and hit the mountains. And really, when it comes to technology, what we believe is that you get a good team, that team develops a really good product, and that product gives you growth. The growth enables you then to reinvest back into a good team, build a better product, have more growth. And if you can put a mission then on top of that, it enables you to attract even better people to your team, who will sometimes forego bigger salaries elsewhere because they know that there's a bigger mission that they're part of in the long run. And getting again philosophical, in the age of AI, where people now will be able to do more purposeful things. And who knows what happens with that. We believe that startups that do have a mission are going to be the ones that will attract the best talent. And therefore, to your point, you create the biggest flywheels, but totally.
Absolutely. You mentioned fundraising a few minutes ago, Niall. And obviously, to be able to do all this, you need to raise money. You got to pay people. People need to live in order to deliver this impact that you've set out to deliver. So how have you navigated the world of fundraising over the last number of years for an impact venture like ATech?
So I think we've been, I don't want to say lucky, Pete. You make your own luck, totally. But we were always the believer that you got to find the right investors, and that there are plenty of good investors out there who believe in what we're doing. They're both mission driven, and they believe in, at the same time, they want to make a huge return. We want 100x. Anybody who gives us money, we want to at least 100x that. So we were quite selective, maybe fortunately so, on who we went after initially. And again, Techstars in 2016, our first angel investor came out of that. We met him at an investor lunch in Paddington in London. The mission of the company resonated with the guy. He was formerly the head of derivatives at Credit Suisse, Barclays, lived in London, a great Dutch guy. We found that by getting people like him in, to your point about a flywheel, Pete, he was able to tell more people about what we were doing who were like-minded. We wanted intentionally from the outset to attract the right type of investor who did want to return, but let's say they were patient capital. And we found people who were relatively patient, but at the same time were looking for a return. And we were conscious about that. We targeted them, and we did enough, around the messaging that there were a lot of impact funds out there, but there were also VCs attracted to what we were doing. ESG started to become a thing. And with that, then we were able to, win a lot of competitions. That was strategic in the early days, get some grant funding from big names. And by getting grant funding from big, well-known names, and we got quite a bit of funding from layer 1, layer 2 blockchains as well, that helped us to build a credibility with the more, commercially focused VCs. And when they saw that we became profitable, we're generating revenue, and we didn't really need as much capital, then we found that they wanted to do that. But I guess when it came to VC, we were, again, very targeted in who we went to. We would have gone and practiced what was preached by people at Techstars, that the best intros often come from successful founders within a portfolio. And we learned back in the Techstar days that when it came to fundraising, we were maybe naive before we went there, that Cold outreach can work, but be very targeted, make it really specific and tailor your messaging and your to the VC. For example, I would go on LinkedIn and I would see, does this VC volunteer maybe for a specific organization? Have they invested in the founders that I know of? Are there similar companies that they've invested into us? Do they go on Twitter and talk about things that relate to the mission and approach people in the right way? So I think we did a pretty good job over the years, and I hope we still do it, getting the right people in. And I would say then a lot of the people who see what we're doing and the impact we're making are attracted by it, and they probe a little bit and they go, are you guys a charity? Are you guys commercial? Am I really going to make a return back on my money? And then when we go through financial modeling, we tell them, people who've invested in the company already, that these are pure commercial people, but they see that the world is changing and that companies like us, we believe, are going to be the ones to succeed. That's, I guess, how we've managed to navigate that. And again, because of the work we've been doing, a lot of the, rounds that we've pieced together over the years, it maybe one VC has told their buddies and get one over the line, the rest of them follow on. But what we also did, and we were conscious of it, and again, non-dilutive capital. And again, I keep going back to Techstars, but that had a huge impact on us. And we went through Launch Incubator with Jason Calacanis, learned a huge amount from him. Mass Challenge, we did a bit of accelerator hopping in the early days. We talked about the ways of getting the messaging out there, talking to people. We picked up a huge amount from all of those different accelerator programs, but that's really how we became conscious of fundraising and avoided, I think, a lot of the early mistakes when it came to targeting VCs. And just on the non-dilutive stuff, when we were at Techstars again, we came across a lot of VCs at the Mentor Madness week, and they were like, I like what you're doing. But the messaging was really super kind of charity NGO focused at the time, because the mission was and still is that way. They were like, don't do it. It's going to go nowhere. And we said, no, we think it is. But then we thought, you know what the hack is? And this might be useful for people in the audience. We went to a lot of people who give out grants, like I mentioned, Rockefeller Foundation, and even layer ones who were like looking for good use cases of crypto. And we proved to them that we have been getting traction, we can make an impact, and it's worth your while giving us a 7-figure grant. Because in addition to that, we can bring organizations with us, big brand names, who have maybe, let's call it a mission-driven function, and they've helped hundreds of thousands of people over the years where blockchain does make an impact. And we would have gotten funding, and it came with the condition that we will bring a big user base to you of real people. And if you give us a chunk of funding, we'll develop our platform, but it's got to align with the roadmap and the vision that we're going in. That also bring a big user base. And that means that it's non-dilutive. Our cap table isn't diluted. That gives us more time than if and when we need it to go after VCs who may demand a bigger return. And I guess when fundraising started recently, even bigger liquidation preferences and all the different rights, warrants, things that have happened over the last couple of years in venture. But we were able to mitigate that by getting grant funding because of the successes we've had. So that's how we've gone about it, Pete. It's a hack and things that I tell people as part of my own mentoring with Techstars, that if you can, and you do have a mission, there is grant funding out there for the right opportunities, but you got to have traction and prove, I think, to really take advantage of them and be persevering and persistent.
Totally. And everything you're saying, again, is like verbatim in terms of the guidance that we give to founders with Techstars with funding. So thank you for articulating that so well, Niall, and thank you for mentoring our founders as well. And it's awesome to have you continuing to give first and give back. So thank you. In our last recorded chat, Niall, we talked about the inner workings of you, and you mentioned perseverance, you mentioned persistence, industriousness, being commercial minded, using meditation to stay calm, but finding positives and being somewhat impatient. And I could see that. Tapping your fingers to ground yourself in the moment and getting out of your own way. Shout out to you two for that lyric. Since 2018, what new ingredients have you added to the recipe?
I'd like to think, Pete, not a whole pile has changed. Maybe I'm boring, but I'm pretty consistent. And I think that's what you've got to be over the years. But yeah, I think whatever life is a mind game in a way. Startups are a mind game. At least to me, that's how I feel about it. And then if you can get out of your own way and you can focus on a bigger mission and keep your inner workings, I like to maybe say I'm calm aggressive, not passive aggressive, but calm aggressive. But being able to see the bigger picture at all times. If you take a step back at the end of the day, even what we're doing here, it's very important. We're helping people on the ground. We'll treat it with the utmost importance. But at the same time, at the end of the day, we're not doctors. We're not out there on the operating table. You take a step back and realize at the end of the day, we're playing a game. It's one that matters. But be grateful for the stuff that's there, having children, having a family, being healthy, etc. But if you put things in perspectives, I think this was back to Bono, who talked about get out of your own way. He talked about perspective being a cure for depression, whether he was misquoted or not. But I think to a certain extent that can give you is a cure for a lot of different things. And if you can step back literally from your laptop, your desktop, what you're doing, and focus on the things that we've got to be grateful for. And if you're fortunate, like I think you and I are, Pete, to live in Ireland and have all these opportunities to meet with great founders and to be working on exciting tech and making a return, making people happy. I mean, there's a lot to be grateful for. So perhaps maybe, Pete, a sense of gratitude to be able to be in the startup game, but more so that being appreciative of the fact that we're working on a mission and show delight every day. I would say they're the only things that have really changed since 2018, and that I'm taking a more conscious effort to try and make that rub off on other people. I remember meeting you in 2018 at an event down in Smurfit in Blackrock, and you had quoted the 4 H's, which I tell people. I quote you, and I think you got it from maybe Stevie Insights at the time, but I do remember your presentation, which was awesome at the time in Smurfit. And you talked about founders that you said, like, a lot of Irish people tend to embody this. And I think you're right. And it's when you go abroad and you speak with people from different countries, you realize that in Ireland, and correct me if I butcher it here, Pete, but what I try and do is embody that too. Be happy, be humble, be hungry. And you tell me what the 4th one is.
Helpful. And I've got a 5th now.
Helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Happy, hungry, humble, helpful. Happy, hungry, humble, helpful. Happy, hungry, humble, helpful. The 5th one that I've discovered is healthy. And you said it a few minutes ago.
Wow.
Mental health and physical health. And health impacts mood. Mood impacts, obviously, happiness. Happiness breeds influence.
Yeah.
And if you are healthy, mental wise, physical wise, you're generally going to be a happier person. And if you're happier, you're going to be able to influence, you're going to be able to lead better. You're going to be able to take a big breath when you have to carry everybody on your shoulders for a year. I've found that over the last 6 years to be more conscious of that than I had been in the past. Obviously, aging is something that gets you to think about that a bit more. But at the same time, it's changed things for me, absolutely, to focus on that as the 5th H. So anyone that you might have relied upon for support over the last number of years that you think that has been critical for you in being able to stay the course?
Yeah, again, this goes back to Pete being whatever appreciative, but I guess immediate family, wife, kids, without even knowing it, and my co-founder Joe, my mother, etc. And again, I get quite a lot, Pete, from podcasts. I really do, but I find there's such a volume of things and such great information that's out there that's at people's fingertips that is readily available. And a lot of the mistakes, you can cut them out, or you can mitigate them, or you can preempt them. But again, if a podcast was a human being, along with my co-founder, Joe, my mother, my family, I would say they are the people, along with things like meditation, but to your point, keeping healthy, keeping happy, and going to the gym, working out, hitting the bike, running, lifting weights, hitting the ice bath, but all these different things. You're dead right. I'm going to take that 5th H. In terms of helpfulness, that's it. But anyway, Pete, you are a part of the help, if I'm being brutally honest, listening to this and the people that you bring on, because I find if you can try and take a little bit of knowledge from all these great people out there. I listened to a great episode of the pod this morning, the guys at Empire, Santiago and Jason, with the founder of DYDX, talking about his journey and what it is to be a founder, etc. But I found, again, new things cropped up that I thought about, and I pondered a little bit this morning. But I would say, yeah, that's what it is, Pete. That's how I've been fortunate to have that great network and both people and pods.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Niall, for over the years, just how helpful you've been in suggesting guests to me, making introductions that have nothing to do with the podcast, of just people who could be helpful and people that I could have even inspiring chats with that might lead to who knows what at some point in the future. I guess that's the whole idea, or that is the whole idea behind Give First, but I don't see it as me giving anything. It's me kind of having a chat with somebody and finding inspiration that I then drive into something else. So thank you for your thoughtfulness in all of these intros that you've done for me over the years. Finally, I know that Owen would say it this way because he would always say it this way when we got to this point of the podcast. Niall, you've shared a lot. But what is one thing that people would not expect to know about you?
There's not, I'm a pretty open book, I think, Pete, overall.
You are.
You
are. We shared a lot last time about you busking in Galway on Chop Street. And I've gone back to the scene of the crime many times since our last chat 6 years ago on this. And your love of U2 and With or Without You being the song that made the difference for you, and you singing that song, walking out onto stage with the Fly intro of George Bush of We Will Rock You. Back in the day where that was like, oh my God, you can do that with video, with AI. You can actually take George Bush and have him say, we will rock you. Imagine what people would be having George Bush be saying right now with the AI that you can do. So think like a space cadet, aim for the outer galaxy, and we hope we get to the moon in a responsible and ethical manner. All these wonderful things that you've shared and you continue to share over the years. And I think that obviously giving you a platform to do all this 6 years ago and then today is because I totally respect and are appreciative of everything you've done for the community and for the messaging around blockchain, the messaging around Web3, around crypto, around stable coins, and just help to tell that story is so meaningful and so supportive for founders in this space and for the growth of this space. So thank you again for that.
Thank you, Pete. And look, I really appreciate what you do every day. And again, I think you're whether you know it or not, I think you're building an empire of the mind for all the people who listen to you, and the work that you do that's embodied by being the MD of Techstars Web3, seeing firsthand all the companies that go through the core, the work that you and Hugh McGarr do and all the people every year. But I can see that snowballing and the effect that you're having on a day-to-day basis in concert with your newsletter, with this, your venture activity, your collaboration with people, and even Dublin beyond. But hats off to you, Pete. Again, this sounds cheesy, but you have been an inspiration for myself in what you do every day. So great to be here. Great to make a comeback. And maybe 5 years time for now, when we become an impact decacorn in the age of the eye, you'll have me back.
Oh, I will. And thank you, Niall, for the kind words. You are far too kind. And I know that decacorn time will come, and just keep driving one foot in front of the other. That mission mindset has taken you so far already. It's going to take you a lot further. So thank you.
Just getting started.
That does it for this week, folks. Thanks to Niall Dennehy for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. One more time. Check out the show notes on moneyneversleeps.ie for all the relevant links to learn more about Niall, ATech, and the Kare Wallet. If you like what you heard, please leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as it helps others to find the show. Also, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for mixing and editing this episode. Conan is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I'm an early-stage startup investor focused on where fintech meets crypto and crypto meets Web3, and I lead the Techstars Web3 Accelerator. Applications are open now for our spring 2025 class, so check us out on techstars.com/accelerator/web3 to apply. There are plenty of links in the show notes on moneyneversleeps.ie on how to get in touch, so don't hesitate to reach out. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!